What's up guys, Justin here with the CGEssentials.com. So in today's video we're going to check out some new features contained inside the updated version of the Tree and Vegetation add-on for Blender. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so the Tree Vegetation add-on is an add-on from BPRODUCTION. You might know them from some of their other add-ons as well, so like Gobo's light textures, as well as they've got multiple different asset libraries. You've got like Grass Blade, which is grass and weeds. You've got Forestation, which is high quality 3D scan trees, Gardener, which is like hedges and shrubs. So these guys have a lot of stuff going on, right? They've also got their car and transportation add-on. Specifically in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Tree and Vegetation add-on. So it's got a couple cool additional features in here that can really make your life a lot easier. And so we've talked about this before, but they've got a ton of different trees that you can use inside of Blender. And one of the cool things about them is most of the trees can be changed for different seasons as well. So as you can see, they've got a really big library of different trees contained inside of this add-on. You can see them all on their page, but there's really two things that they've added that I think are really interesting. So the first is now you can use these inside of the asset browser. And so the way this used to work, right, is you'd have vegetation open over here on the right hand side, and you'd have to click in here and then kind of scroll through the different items that were in here. Now they were sorted by different kinds, right? So I could come in here and look under like tree, for example, but anytime you had to scroll or anything like that, it could just be a little bit annoying working with it on the right hand side of the page. So now all you have to do is in your preferences just install the packs that come along with this and just set them up in your asset libraries right here, and then it's going to actually have these trees show up inside of your asset browser. So now if I go into my asset browser and I go to Tree Vegetation, it's going to populate this with all of these different trees. So now I can take these trees and I can just drag them into my scene like this. One thing to note about that is you may want to do this in solid mode, just because the materials do take a little while to compile. So it's going to be a lot faster if you bring those in solid mode instead, and then let the materials compile at a future point. Otherwise, it's going to do it every time you drag a new tree in. And so one of the questions you might have is, well, what about the seasons? Well, the seasons are actually pretty easy. We'll go ahead and jump over into material preview mode for a second. So the seasons are pretty easy. You can just drag a shader window over here. So just open this window up, go to shader editor. And so depending on the tree you have selected, you can click in here and you can adjust things about the tree. But specifically in this case, right, if you wanted this to be like autumn, you could just type in a value of 1 in the autumn, and notice how the color of the tree is going to change. If you wanted this to go to the winter version, you could just tap the 1 right here, and you're going to go to the winter version right here. If you put all of these back to 0, then these are going to stay as the summer version. And then I think the randomization should still work. So if I click on this and I click on the randomize button, notice how the randomization and snap tree to ground are still going to work. So we can now use this in order to drop in trees from the asset browser, as opposed to having to use the window on the right hand side. So that's definitely a cool feature, but the feature that I'm finding is really helpful is the ability now to use the biomes from vegetation inside of GeoScatter. So one thing to note about this is the biomes are only available in the Pro version up here. So it's not available in the light version, it's only available in the Pro version. But basically what these are is this is preset collections of trees that you can use inside of GeoScatter. Note that you do have to have the GeoScatter add-on in order to do this, obviously. But if you do have that, these biomes are going to be available, and they're actually pretty cool. And so let's say that we were to add a plane in here like this. I'm going to scroll it up a little bit, or I'm going to scale it up a little bit, and then we'll just apply our rotation and scale right here. And what I want to do is I want to use the add-on GeoScatter in order to scatter on top of this object, right? So we want to scatter some trees and some other things, but we want to do it using the biome from Tree and Vegetation. So we can click on the biome right here under Open Biomes, and I've already loaded it in. But notice how if I scroll down, I've actually got biomes from the Tree and Vegetation add-on. So I can use this in order to use these preset collections of trees like this. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick one of these biomes. Let's do something with maybe like some smaller trees. So something like this right here. So we're just going to click on the plus button for coniferous biome, and that's going to bring that in. And one thing you may want to think about is you may want to think about saving before you do this, just in case, because it's bringing a bunch of stuff into your scene. But one of the cool things about this is Scatter is actually going to manage this for you, meaning that it's going to bring all these systems in, but it's going to bring them in as proxies. Right? So notice how these are being brought in as proxies inside of your scene right here, meaning that this has brought those trees in and it's scattered them, but it's made them into low poly proxies so that you can't actually see the geometry that's in there until you render it. That is a great thing to protect you from your model like crashing whenever you're trying to actually render things. And so note that even if you toggle over here like this, those still aren't going to show up. It's only going to show up when you actually do a final render. So let's say that I was to add a camera real quick, just set it up where we can see this. It's not going to be like a super great camera or anything like that. But then once we get that camera view set up, we're just going to go up and we're going to do a render image just so I can show you what this does when you actually render it. All right, so then you can see how when you finally render this out, the trees and the other stuff actually shows up in the scene. And this is obviously a quick render that I did just to show you that the stuff shows up in here. There's obviously some denoising stuff I'd want to do and some other things like that. But overall, the quality of the assets inside of the add-on is really high. I will say it does get pretty heavy, so you're going to want to do some stuff to maybe try to manage that if you're doing a scene like this one with a bunch of extra stuff in there. But overall, being able to bring those biomes in and populate things from directly inside of Scatter is super valuable. I think it's a cool interface with the Tree Vegetation add-on. All right, so that's where I'm going to end this video. I will link to Tree and Vegetation on this page, but let me know what you think about Tree Vegetation or the other Tree and Vegetation add-ons that are out there for Blender. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.